Um, this is question is directed toward President Harris. Thank you very much for joining us here. I have major concerns with the idea of building offshore wind in our freshwater lakes, Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. When I posed the question previously to the head of NYSERDA about the study that was underway that NYSERDA was sponsoring, he actually wasn't aware of it, quite frankly. So it was very troubling to me that there is a study underway, and I've heard nothing about the study. I wonder if you could update me on where we are with this offshore wind study for the Great Lakes, particularly Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and where we are in that process right now with that study.
Certainly. We have been hard at work in advancing the study that was actually required by Public Service Commission order in 2020. We anticipate actually delivering that study over the summer to the Commission to the public for consideration according to the schedule laid out in the order. We have been hard at work really looking at the resource from multiple factors. I'd say it's known as a feasibility study. So it's an initial screening of the potential that it may prepare or may provide. As part of it, we have had a number of public meetings and have engaged with a number of stakeholders one-on-one. I'd personally be glad to meet with you directly if you have specific questions. But I would say the level of engagement has been extensive throughout the year. And I personally am looking forward to the study's findings as well as any next steps it may recommend.
Thank you. I did participate in some of those public meetings. I do have some concerns, though. I looked at the list of people that are working on this study, and I don't see anybody that actually has any interest outside of green energy, quite frankly. You've got a lot of engineers and people that are involved in green energy, and potentially people that are representing companies that could profit from an offshore wind project in Lake Erie. But I don't see anybody that knows anything about hydrology, about waterfowl or the ecology of the lake. I don't see anybody that actually knows about our fisheries which are critically important to our area, and certainly the fact that we have 11 million people that draw their drinking water out of Lake Erie alone. So how can you make a fair assessment to deliver to the PSC if you don't have a balanced approach to who's analyzing this information?
Totally agree. This study is comprehensive in the sense that it's evaluating, to your point, environmental, maritime, economic, social issues, as well as the economic opportunity and, of course, the grid opportunity as well. We have a series of consultants that are working with us, including those that are experts in the fields that you had identified. And I want you to know, when we think about the resource, we are doing so comprehensively.
Well, I'd like to see a list of those consultants, because nobody on the list of people that appears in the study are actually anything other than experts on green energy. And that is very troubling, because they obviously have I would consider a slanted view of what the outcome of this should be. And let me also say that we don't know what's at the bottom of Lake Erie, but I can tell you it's nothing good, and it's been covered up. Our industrial past, the fact that Lake Erie was declared a dead lake in the 1970s because of the toxic waste that was dumped into it for decades. The last thing I think we need to do is dig up the bottom of that lake and release those toxins back into the drinking water of 11 million people. So the fact that you have people that are essentially only pro this project on this study is very troubling, and I would seriously ask you to strongly consider changing out some of these folks so we have a more balanced approach. But I appreciate your response, though. And
thank you. And we
move on
follow
quickly to another topic here. Right now, Western New York, where I live, used to actually be energy independent. And until the closing of the two power plants in Western New York, we now import power from some of the dirtiest old-fashioned coal plants in America, like places like Homer City, Pennsylvania. So how do you rectify the fact that New York is now importing more power than it ever has from some of the dirtiest sources of power in America? How are you going to become either whether it's 70 by 30 or 100% renewable if we're building more pipelines, if you will, to import power, instead of just saying we're actually going to truly be renewable? How does that work? How does that work when we're building new power lines right now to dirty old-fashioned coal plants?
Thank you, Senator. One thing that we look at every year is actually what is contributing to our consumption. That's the goal of the Climate Act, is how are we consuming energy here in New York. So we do import in two ways. We import primarily from Quebec, which is primarily hydropower, as one would expect, renewable hydropower. I think that was about 7% of our load that was served by renewables from Quebec. And then we do import about 6% of our load from PJM to our south and to our west. And ultimately, that is reflected in the achievement of our goals. This is all embodied in our accounting. And as the mix of resources in Pennsylvania shifts, so will our accounting thereof. As of now, I think it's actually the majority is natural gas and nuclear with a smaller amount of coal. But
Well,
so you know, this is all accounted for.
Right, but the bottom line is it's a shell game. You're importing power and saying we're green here at the source. That's the power. That's the troubling part. That's not a real commitment to actually doing it. It's actually a commitment to pretend that we're doing it. But thank you anyway.